here. I will start to share my screen. So my lecture will be about subjective well-being of children left behind by migrant parents in 6 European countries. This is the keynote speech, but the article has the same title, was published last year in Child Indicator Research, and is authored by me, but also uh, we had 3 teams, one from Poland, Tomasz and Dorota Strozik from Poznan University, from University of Tartu, Estonia, Kadriso and Dagmar Kuchar, and from the University of Oradea, Sergiu Baltatescu and Claudia Bachter. So the main question, the big question is about the effect of migration of the parents on children's subjective well-being, on left behind children's subjective well-being. So first, why are children being left behind? So why parents leave them? So first, lack of documents for children and families due to the migration process, and also it happens that work visas often prevent migrants from bringing their families and obtaining visitor visa also for their children. But also they cannot really care for their children because they have to work there. And in some this is from literature review, parents may, in some cases, may also want to protect their children from racism and discrimination in the destination countries. But also the educational problems. For example, it will be very difficult for some children to interrupt their studies and go to other countries. So in case they are in terminal years of a cycle or something like that, the parents will leave them alone. But also the problem with not only children are left behind, sometimes also elders are left behind. Of course, our group is more focused on children. So the strategies that parents use depend on these two choices. Either parents expect reunification in the destination country, or they plan to return then of course, if they plan to return, there is not a lot of cases where they bring children with them. Now, the effects of parental migration on children are mostly negative. But I will start. I'm a happiness researcher, so I will start with positive effects. So, of course, resources, remittances that alleviate financial pressure on family members, including children. Children can benefit from improved financial condition and higher status, because it's always in the migration process of the problem of status, because you know from the theories of migration, families are motivated to migrate if their status is become lower than the status of the migrants' neighbors. or migrant people from migrant families from the same village. In turn, they also improve financial conditions, and they improve their status because, of course, of the remittances. And also the remittances permit to children to have better education, healthcare, and also parents can also turn back with business investments. And there was in America there were some analyses where social networks built during the migration process contribute to the social capital of children. And it's often that social capital of children is linked with the social capital of parents. Now we go to negative effects that are on 2 pages in my presentation. So first, there are problems with education. School enrollment decreases, dropout rate increase, academic achievement is negatively affected. Also, health-related quality of life, because they start to be neglected, is also affected. But the most important effects that have been discussed are the psychological effects, the mental health effect, like depression, anxiety disorders, conduct disorders, substance use. And there are a lot of research that show that small children perceive their parents leaving them behind as a sort of abandonment, and somehow the effects are quite similar to those of the divorce. Of course, there are when it's try to put everything in an equation and do some regressions, there's always the problem of direction of causal relationship and of endogeneity, because we in the surveys, we don't always include all the variables needed to explain, for example, the decision of migration. And also, let's take it's a simple endogeneity problem, like the relationship, for example, between migration and divorce. So migration causes separation and leads to divorce, but also the problems that already exist in some families push or motivate more parents to migrate and alone, mostly the father. So this also conduce to divorce. So you don't have really. It's not so easy to do a causation chain here, to draw a causation line here. Now, our paper is on subjective well-being. It was published on a journal called Child Indicator Research, which is more or less a replica to the famous journal called Social Indicator Research, that was published first in 1974 and was the flagship of the social indicator movement, but everything was at that point for adults. Now, child indicator research discuss quality of life and well-being of children, and is mostly quantitatively focused. And you can see there some very good articles on subjective well-being. So for those are who are not familiar with subjective well-being, although I don't think there's a lot of people who are not really familiar. Subjective well-being is a person's favorable assessment of their overall quality of life, and is measured by cognitive means like satisfaction. And we will see the measures for children, and affective, positive and negative affect. Since as I was saying, since the 80s, while all discussion started in psychology and sociology about age-old subjective well-being, until quite recently the discussion on children's well-being was discussion on mostly on poverty and education, and based usually on objective indicators. Now there was a whole movement that started in the 90s, with recognizes children's subjective perspective. And first, it's always the same in science. For example, when they started the subjective well-being and happiness research, they specialists ask themselves if ages can give reliable answers about their happiness. And now we start again with the question, are children capable of assessing their subjective well-being? And the whole process of discussing that and analyzing that is ongoing. And what I can say, we are prepared for the fifth wave of the Children's World International Survey on child well-being, and we tested all kinds of subjective well-being measures with children of starting with 8 years old, 10 years old, and 12 years old. And of course, also PISA recently introduced subjective well-being measures, and all kind of other surveys like HBSC, for example, they also have subjective well-being. So we pretty much are confident that we can grasp and we can reliably measure subjective well-being in children. What we know from the data, for example, my previous studies in Romania show that children with parents abroad are generally unhappier, and the strongest effect is when both parents are abroad, but also only when the mother is abroad. There is also a very strong effect on their subjective well-being. Now, there's a lot of other studies in many different countries, for example, Indonesia, Philippines, Ecuador, Albania, and I think also you have invited Chebotari at some point. I remember, I'm not sure. But anyway, in rural China, in all of China, left behind children have low satisfaction. And also Ghana, most of the survey, most of the papers really put this in evidence. Now, what are the factors that are moderating this relationship? First, gender. It seems that girls may be more affected emotionally by parental absence, may also feel insecure, and also given the distribution of the gender distribution of tasks within the family, girls have to increase their household work, and this, of course, affect their educational and also their psychological well-being. In case of age, smaller children are more affected than older children. Older children seems to pass through an adaptation process. So, of course, there is this case that older children are not so dependent on parents. They start to spend more with their friends and so on. In case of material resources, there is a weak mediation. Satisfaction with material goods has a minimal impact on subjective well-being, and the harsh truth that should be told is that remittances do not compensate for parental uh, absence. That's in most of cases. Besides, there are again endogeneity effect, because we expect when we measure the relationship between material well-being and migration, because usually in most of cases, of course, we have also migration of the blue collar, but of highly trained specialists. But in most of cases, the poor families migrate, so then their well-being is already low. So when we compare with other families, we don't find really positive material positive effects. And of course, this could be compensated by longitudinal research. Unfortunately, in all this field, and I surveyed for this paper and for some other paper, a lot of papers on subjective well-being of migrants and on subjective well-being of children left behind. And the fact is that we don't really have longitudinal research on this topic, so we don't measure well-being of children before and in the middle of the migration process of their parents. So this is a great gap in the literature. Of course, um, care, caregiver support is very important. Frequent interaction with migrant parents is linked with higher life satisfaction and self-esteem, but as in the case of other families, higher parental support can increase subjective well-being, but excessive monitoring decrease life satisfaction. But in general, family satisfaction is lower for left behind children. In case of school effects, most of the studies show that school satisfaction is decreased, but there are studies that show that the opposite. Now, we used for this paper a lot of research questions, and I will answer. I still have 10 minutes to answer to some of them. What are the comparative levels of subjective well-being of children left behind in different countries? And I will show you that we chose 6 countries, and I will tell you why. What is the relation between parental migration and children's satisfaction with family life and with life in general? Does parental migration has the same influence on girls and boys? How do the children of migrating parents assess the material situation of the family? Is children's satisfaction with school life affected by migration of parents? And how are these factors influencing independently the subjective well-being of children in different countries? So what are these countries? The countries are Albania, Croatia, Estonia, Hungary, Poland, Romania. And the sample is extracted from the big survey on called Children's World. I was telling about it, the International Survey for Children's Well-being. From the wave 3, and the fieldwork was in 2017 and 2000 and between these years, and the focused one was on 8 years old children, 10 years old children, and 12 years old children around these ages. For example, in Romania, we focused on second grade, fourth grade, and sixth grade, and with representative samples at national level, over 1,000 children for each age group. But the question was only inserted for the questionnaires for this age group, 10 years old and 12 years old. Of course, the age varies around 10, 11 years or 12, 13 years. And the question is, in the last year, did either of your parents live or work away from home for more than a month? Mother, yes, in another part of the country, yes, in a different country. Father, no, or yes, in the country. The satisfaction with life was measured by a single question: how satisfied are you with your life as a whole? But also there was a scale called Students' Life Satisfaction, Children's World Subjective Wellbeing Scale, that has items like my life is going well, I have a good life, the things that happen in my life are excellent, I like my life, I'm happy with my life. And you drop the fifth item, I like my life, and because of the low comparability, and usually this scale showed better psychometric qualities than overall satisfaction with life. So we use this for our paper. Children, family related satisfaction. How satisfied are with your people you live with? School life satisfaction. How satisfied are with your life as a student? And we also had a material deprivation index by adding the number of items that children lacked from 0 to 8. So the items were clothes and shoes in good condition, enough money for school trips, internet at home, equipment for sport and hobbies, pocket money, mobile phone, things like that. So when we measure satisfaction or subjective well-being or life satisfaction, whatever, there is somehow a paradox here, because the most you see here the 6 European countries. I forgot to tell that these were the countries. These were from Europe, the sending countries, in which we had samples for the Children's World Survey. And these are usually the sending countries. We also have samples from Western Europe, but these and also Southern Europe, but these are receiving countries, not sending countries. So we focused on sending countries. So these were the countries, and it's a paradox that the countries with poorest children have also very high levels of satisfaction. It's like Albania and Romania, and among these, among the others, you can see that Estonia and Poland have lower percentages of children evaluating their lives highly. And in fact, on an international level, we had in the third wave, we had 35 countries, and there was a paradox. The unhappiest country in the world from the point of view of children was Korea, but not North Korea, but South Korea. And I also published a paper in which I tried to interpret and to explain why these factors are. And one of the um, interpretation is that if the request that we placed on the children, the burden that we place on the children by a very highly competitive school system, um, if they live in this kind of countries, the material well-being is compensated negatively by the request. So in most cases, where competitive school system, where we have helicopter parenting and children have less free time, there is this problem, and children are not so happy as in less competitive school system. So it's a paradox. The adults' life satisfaction at national level is very highly correlated with the wealth of the nation, but it's not correlated at all with the in case of children. So it's also and it seems, and the qualitative research shows that very well, that given the fact that the children have not much autonomy, and they have to do what the parents said, they value much more their freedom than the adults. And for example, for all these 35 countries, okay, so sorry, good. So for these 35 countries, the best predictor for their subjective well-being is how free they are feeling in their free time. So, okay. Now I will go faster and hope to finish in 5 minutes. Now, okay. Thank you. There you can see the index of material deprivation is higher in Albania. Where it's higher where the children are happier, in Albania and in Romania, and is lower where children are unhappier, for example, in Estonia and Hungary. Okay, now if we look at the average subjective well-being and parental migration, we can see that in most countries, children with at least one parent abroad had significantly lower level of subjective well-being compared to non-migrant children. The difference in subjective well-being between migrant and non-migrant children were mostly pronounced in Poland. And across all countries, children with a migrant mother experience particularly low level of subjective well-being. Of course, there are some differences. You can see here as indicated, there is a difference between the groups. Now, when we split by boys and girls and 10 years old and 12 years old, I mean, 10 years old is the group, but of course they are around 10 years old because it's the fourth grade, at least in Romania, and 12 years old is the sixth grade in Romania. So a more severe impact is on girls. So we tested this hypothesis. Of course, there are differences between countries, and contrary to the theory, the highest impact is on 12 years old, not on 10 years old. Yes. However, there are differences. For example, in Croatia and Hungary, there is no such outgoing, no so much outgoing migration, and we wouldn't find these differences. Now, children's satisfaction with families is lower in Albania, Estonia, and Romania, and also family material deprivation was higher for children of migrants compared to non-left behind children. It's what I was telling you. Now when we try to predict, we did given the differences, and you can see here that we have differences. We have differences in the percent of parents involved. So we didn't do an overall sample. We tested comparatively by countries. So we did a logistic regression on subjective well-being of children by regressing it onto parental migration. So these are the independent variables: parental migration, family and school life satisfaction, and material deprivation by countries. So here is a summary of what we found. Material deprivation was associated with lower subjective well-being across all countries. Parental work migration have significant effect on subjective well-being in Estonia, Poland, and Romania, even after considering family and school satisfaction. Satisfaction with family in school predicted overall life satisfaction in most of countries. Overall life satisfaction decreased with age across countries. So and also, but gender was split. In boys have higher satisfaction in Croatia, Hungary, Poland, and Romania, while girls have higher satisfaction in Albania. And it's also interesting that in Muslim countries, women, also adult women, report they are happier than the males. So it may be something linked with the culture. So in summary, the 6 European countries show a complex situation regarding children left behind. Albania and Romania have higher prevalence of temporary separation compared to Croatia and Hungary, who are the lowest in this. Gender disparity exists in migration. Fathers more likely to migrate than mothers, except in Romania, where interesting. In Romania we have a migration of care. It's a care drain. Yes, mothers' migration is higher because they are highly requested as carers in other countries. Various factors contribute to gender disparities, including societal expectation, job opportunities, and caregiving roles. Parental migration overall significantly affect children well-being subjective well-being across countries. In Romania and partially in Albania and Estonia, there are significant differences in subjective well-being between left behind and non-left behind children. Children of migrant parents experience higher level of material deprivation, which of course impacts overall subjective well-being. So we don't really, in this case, we don't really know absolutely sure that there is a separate impact on migration, besides the fact that previously to the migration, they already have lower levels of material wealth. Context-specific factors such as family and school satisfaction mediate the relationship between parental migration and child subjective well-being. And it's still a little, and there's still more research to be done to understand the interaction between parental migration, children's subjective well-being, and these mediating factors. And we need in different countries targeted in the intervention and policies that can take into account the context-specific differences. And but overall, the message is that policymakers and practitioners should gain a deeper understanding of the unique challenges faced by left behind children, and of course develop intervention to this vulnerable population. Of course, there's plenty of limitation. You can see that there was no separation between labor migration and other kind of migration. So we don't know for sure, but in most cases, we suppose that there is a labor migration involved. Lack of information of the duration and timing of parental separation. So we only ask if their parents went 1 month in the last year. So we don't know if their parents were simultaneously abroad or alternatively abroad. And the study did not examine the relationship and frequency of contacts between children and their migrant parents. So we tried, and I'm not sure Mickey is here. We tried to submit a proposal for a follow-up paper that will focus on the effects of family structure and care arrangement, because we know in these cases with who the children were left in whose care the children were left. But apart from that, we don't know much about younger children, for example, 8 years old. We don't know exactly what happens in multi-generational household, but we suppose that these living in this kind of countries may mitigate the effect of absent parents. And of course, you need to have very good measures on frequency of contact between children and migrant parents. So that was all. Thank you very much. I look forward to your comments and questions.
Thank you, Sergiu.